Good morning, class. Happy Wednesday. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about the refugee crisis, but in a slightly different way. Yesterday we looked at data and numbers of refugees, applications for asylum, IDPs, etc. Today we're going to focus more on the human behind those numbers and the stories that they hold. Our agenda: first, we'll do some of that data review. Second, you are going to be doing a similar type of worksheet, but with more personal touch to it. You're going to be reading refugee stories, going through a worksheet as you read, and then there's a website that will share more stories that you can check out as well. So that worksheet is due today, 3 p.m., once again as a classwork grade. Right, so for this refugee data, everybody got this right, so I don't have a problem going through this. It's pretty simple to get those answers right. The most refugees come from places like Syria, Afghanistan, South Sudan. Most IDPs come from Colombia, Syria, the Democratic Republic of Congo. A lot of people, when I asked you to think about what stood out to you, what did you see that maybe you didn't expect, a lot of people they didn't expect Turkey, Pakistan to be countries that accepted the most refugees, even Uganda as being a country that accepts the most refugees. The reason why that's the case is due to simple geographic proximity, right? So the vast majority of refugees, IDPs, are coming from Syria. And if you look at the top 3 list, Afghanistan as well. Well, countries like Turkey and Pakistan are right next to these places. That's why they have accepted the most refugees, because they're right there. And then you look at Sudan, Congo, and Uganda, you can see a similar geographic proximity there too. Also, the second thing that stood out for what surprised you, or at least was unexpected for you, was how the United States has the most applications for asylum, for protection, but they are not on this list of accepted refugees. And some people said Peru stood out to them. They were unsure as to why Peru, why not more places like US and Europe, which I think shows a little bit about kind of a narrow view of the world that we often have in the United States, or even if you're an international student from Europe too. But the reason why Peru is because a lot of refugees are coming from Venezuela as well. And Peru has been generous in accepting those. I realize this data is from 2018. Since 2018, Peru has actually tightened up its borders a little bit. And that's kind of been a trend in a lot of places around the world, not just in Peru. But they're not as generous and open as they used to be. What I want you to do with this data is start thinking about, how does faith inform your views on refugees? What does it mean, living in the United States especially, because most of us do, to love our neighbor and welcome the stranger? How does faith inform our views? And we're going to talk more about this in tomorrow's lesson as well. But what does that actually mean for us today? I asked you guys to talk about what responsibility do these countries that are accepting refugees and accepting those who have applied for asylum, what is their responsibility? And one thing I was grateful to see was quite a few people talked about, like, yes, accepting them is great. It's a good way to love our neighbor and welcome the stranger. But just letting them come here without helping to get them started in some way isn't enough. And that's a question you got to think about. What role does the U.S., for example, have in helping refugees get started when they are here, whether they're here long-term or short-term? What role do we have? What I also hope from today is that we can start viewing refugees not as a bunch of numbers. Probably the third key thing that stood out to you unexpected was just how many people there are, which just one shows you how many people are in the world, but also how there's a lot of suffering and heartbreak and challenges going on in other places that we don't fully recognize because we're not exposed to it. And you might see a glimpse of the news, but that's not enough to really get a clearer picture of what that looks like. There's so many people who are IDPs or refugees. What does it mean to welcome these people? What responsibilities do we have? And I think part of that is humanizing these people, not treating them as numbers, we're treating them as actual people. That's part of loving our neighbor and treating each other like we're made in the image of Christ. So here's what I'd like you to do for today. We're going to expand on some of those ideas later. One, I'm going to show you this in this video, but I have assigned each student a story to focus on. So you don't have to do all the stories, you just have to do one. But I've mixed up which people are doing which person's story. So check that first, because there's a specific story assigned for you. Second, carefully read your story. They're not very long. It shouldn't take you a whole lot of time. There's a PDF that's got all the stories. Find your person's. Carefully read the story, and while/after you are reading it, complete the worksheet that goes along with it. Just like yesterday, it's a Google form for you. This will be a classwork grade, 3 p.m. today. By the way, for yesterday's worksheet, if you would like to retake the last 2 questions, you may do that. Just have that done by Friday, 3 p.m. Just leave a private comment with the updated answers. I emailed back your grade, and if you got anything wrong, you should have gotten a little individual comment feedback for me on why you got it wrong or what I need from you to fix it. So have that done by 3 p.m. if you want to redo yesterday's worksheet, and you can get full points back for that. So 1, here's your assignments for refugee stories. So there are 7 different stories here. All these different people's names here, that's the story. So they'll be repeated throughout the class, right? There's only 7 stories. We've got 26 students in this class. Make sure you do your story. Then fill out the worksheet that goes with it. The stories are all here. The worksheet's right there. After you're done with that, what I would like you to do is check out this website. This website just shares more stories about what it looks like to experience what refugees experience. It's kind of an interactive thing. I will caution you, in the past, I've used this website, and there's it says add your thoughts to the wall. So you can leave little comments of encouragement for these people and whatnot. And I don't really know what possesses people to do this besides being an idiot is something that's cool nowadays. But there have been some entirely inappropriate language, inappropriate tone, whatever you can think of, that have been posted by who knows who, random people around the world. So if you see any of that, I apologize. That's not the intention of this website, and it's definitely not the intention of why I'm asking you to go through it. But I do think these stories are fascinating. There's videos attached to them that you can see as well, just to get more of a personal touch of what this refugee crisis looks like, so we can view these people not just as numbers, but as actual people, because I do think that's a crucial component with how we view immigration as a whole, but specifically the refugee type of immigration. So that's the work for today. If you have questions, please let me know, and I will talk to you more tomorrow.